Hey, welcome everyone. Apologies for being a little late. We're a little rusty on our Zoom skills. So I will call the meeting to order and I will begin with the land acknowledgement in one moment. We acknowledge that East Hants is in Mi'kma'ki in the district of Sipekne'katik, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. We will now have a moment of silent contemplation. Next on our agenda is the approval of or amendments to the agenda. Counselor Tingley. Oh, your little hand sign was up.
I'm just moving to the, oh, this is what was the approval of the agenda?
Yes, we need the approval of the
Yep, I'll
agenda.
motion that.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Counselor Dixon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion is carried. Next, we will be looking for the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of council for policy and in camera held December 10th, 2024, and the regular meeting of council, which was held December the 18th, 2024.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Counselor Mitchell, seconded by Counselor Hebb. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried. Just a reminder, folks, if you'd raise your hand when we say aye or nay or whatever, so I can see who's who. Next, we'll move into correspondence for information. And you see it in front of you. You've had this in front of you for a while. Are there any items under correspondence for information that anyone wants to bring forward? Counselor Mitchell.
It's not on the screen that the congratulations to Sipekne'katik elections. Any reply back about getting together? The two councils? On number 13.
Tim, I'll let you. There has not been a reply for the two councils to meet. However, the chief has asked to come in with some of her staff and meet with Kim and some of our staff, and I would be present at that meeting too as an opening reach out, I guess.
Okay. Well, that's a start. Yes.
Yeah.
Very pleased. Thank you.
Seeing nothing for no one else, I would like to just quickly draw folks' attention to, it's gone now. I think it was item 13, but I'm not sure. Was the letter from Chester around the code of conduct policy. And I think that relates to things that would interest us around perhaps unless I misunderstood, it would be like if we have council members in fire departments and then them not be able to participate in those discussions. I think that's what it refers to, and I just put that out there for council to look at and see if that's something we would like to send a letter off to Minister Lohr supporting Chester's position, or send a letter to NSFM or something, because I don't really think it's reasonable for volunteer firefighters to be excluded from discussion on fire department matters. But I just asked council, what is your thought? I think it was item 13, Shirley, if you wanted to open it up. No,
Or
that's
maybe
No.
47.
47.
47, okay. Yes, that's it.
Counselor Tingley has his hand up, Warden.
Sorry, I'll catch back on to Zoom. Counselor Tingley.
Yes, Warden. I think it would be a good idea to support Chester. I'm not sure if this would be a conflict, but somebody could argue it. So I think this should be taken into consideration. So I'd support them.
Anyone else have any comments?
I support them. Being a member of the fire service.
Would someone like to make a motion perhaps that we send correspondence to the minister in agreement in support of Chester's letter?
I'll make that motion that we send a letter to the minister in
Okay.
support for Chester's letter.
Moved by
Also-
Counselor Mitchell,
Second,
seconded by Counselor Dixon. Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I would say we should also just seek clarification because that wording is very ambiguous. So it doesn't really say that somebody from a fire department or group can't be part of it, but I think we need clarification on the intent of that. Go ahead, CAO. I guess I see you put your hand up as I'm.
That could be
Gonna
any
answer me?
group though.
It could be
Go
any
ahead.
group, exactly.
Go ahead,
So-
Kim.
So Warden, we had this discussion at one of our code of conduct sessions with the provincial representative in the room. And the province is very rarely going to tell you one way or the other whether something is a conflict or not, because an individual has to declare a conflict. And we do have some legal advice on this from a few years ago. And Shirley and I actually have it on our list of things to bring forward with changes to your council procedural policy to have this council decide and put in writing specifically for volunteer fire departments, and we'll have to look at the other groups, just to put in writing that it is or isn't. And we would recommend that your policy say it isn't a conflict for a volunteer firefighter to sit on council and make decisions related to the fire service. So that is coming. It doesn't preclude you from writing this letter, but I didn't want to have you write this letter and then me show up with those changes that we had discussed in a previous meeting without making some comment.
Counselor Merriam.
Yes, could we scroll up and just examine the wording that they're using? Is it just specific to firefighters, or what? Can we just try to parse that a little bit? Yeah, I think given what the CAO just said, I'm just thinking out loud that to give kind of a blanket support to Chester, where they're being kind of all-encompassing, I guess, not very clear on the groups. Would it be if we are working on some specifics, would it be prudent to wait for the specifics? Just a thought.
Well, it does
From-
ask for clarification further down, I believe.
Yeah, if I could, Madam Warden, I think you're writing a letter like this to council, or sorry, to the province, is still a good idea, regardless of what you choose to do, because it is a provincial issue and every council in the province struggles with this. And I think they will continue to struggle with it, probably even more so now that you have a code of conduct that calls it out across the province. So I think you move forward with both. And if the province doesn't like the direction you take when you make changes to your own procedural policy, then you can leave that for them to tell you that. But we'll have full legal review before we bring it to council and have some legal advice for counselors, individual counselors on these matters, because it is an individual choice. It's not a council choice on who declares a conflict. It's rests with the individual. So we want to make sure you have clarity and the same question doesn't keep coming up over and over again. And if the province can provide that clarity, all the better, because then it would be consistent across the province.
All right, I see no one else left to speak. Are you ready for the question? Counselor Rhino.
I'm just wondering if anyone knows how many counselors belong to volunteer fire services across the province. That could be part of the letter as well. strength in numbers. So I just wondered if we could gather that information, put it in.
We probably don't have that information, and it would probably be a fair chore to get it. You'd have to contact all councils and,
Well, I'm sure staff could make a.
but the motion on the floor is to send a letter in support of Chester's letter at this point in time.
Question?
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Back to correspondence for information. Any other items anyone wants to bring forward? Councillor Perry.
Item number 10, which is the response from the Minister of Municipal Affairs regarding our question to Section 22.2 of the MGA to allow in-camera discussions regarding federal and provincial government topics in alignment with the Halifax Charter. I see they're going to look into it. I don't see any other timeline with that, so I just want to make sure that it stays on our radar, because that is definitely something that we need to get sorted out. We can't have one council in the province allowed to do something and different rules for everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items on correspondence for information? Seeing none, we will move to correspondence for decision. Okay, we have a request from the Hants North Baseball Association seeking permission to retain grant funding previously provided for the Hants North Jays International Tournament in 2019. If you read the letter attached, anyone who wasn't on council then would have gotten some background on this. It was a wonderful undertaking that this group started, and then the gentleman who was helping organize it failed to secure visas or something for the Cuban team and failed to return the money that the association had given. Make a long story short, they've taken legal avenues and have the money returned. Part of that money was a grant from council toward the tournament at the time. And their request is if they could be allowed to retain that funding, and they list several things in the letter that they have upcoming that they need to do for the for Findlay Park and some of the buildings and the fields there. So what is your wish, councillors? Councillor Rhino.
Okay, the request was for monies which was granted. Although the international part didn't take place because of what the warden has said, and I won't go over it. The tournament did take place. In preparation for that tournament, when they thought it was going to be international, though a lot of time and effort went in, because a lot of these, they had to prepare for billet children from Cuba. So there was quite a bit of arranging and stuff, monetary and non-monetary things that went on. And it was quite a blow to the Hants Baseball Association when this international accent didn't take place on this. But there was a lot of work we did. They did have the tournament. It went on. It still went on. So, and then they had a long legal battle to try to get this money back. I think the people in our area would be happy with trying to put that money back into an association that has proven so strong for the community. It's very well accepted, very well attended, and it's the center of the community, that Recreation Association. So I would like to move that the funds recovered recovered by the Hants North Baseball Association from legal action be kept and put back in to the association. I so move.
Second,
Seconded by Counselor Perry?
No,
No, who seconded that?
Tingley, Walter.
Counselor Tingley, seconded by Counselor Tingley. Counselor Perry?
um, I'm looking through here and I'm seeing different numbers. What is the number they're asking to retain? Because according to their sheet, we gave them a $9,000 advance and they lost money on the tournament. And then if I read the letter right, they received a $17,000 settlement
I'm
from.
back in. Now, how can I make this? I can't seem to make it full screen anyway.
You need to mute yourself, Carl. What numbers are we talking about here? It doesn't show what numbers we're talking about.
I think the 9,000 was the municipal contribution, if I,
There
and the
was-
other was funding from other. There was,
Or-
all of the funding didn't come from the municipality, what came from us.
I
was
know, but
none.
it's that $9,000. There was nothing on top of that because
No, yeah.
the judgment here, it says they received $17,107.88.
But it was a $10,000 grant, but it was let $9,000 was let, and then after the tournament took place, then they were going to let the other $1,000. So the other $1,000 didn't get out. So it's a $9,000 that was invested, is to my understanding.
Okay, I just trying to figure out what the numbers are. That's all. Thank you.
Right, Kim?
Warden, would it be amenable to council to ensure that the motion includes some sort of reporting back to council on what the $9,000 grant is spent on, similar to DRF reporting?
That agreeable to the mover and the seconder?
Agreeable to me, yes, that they report, but what time frame do you propose for
We
a
can work,
reporting period?
we can work with them just to make sure that at some point we get a report back.
Well, no, if we're gonna ask for a report back, we're gonna have to put a time frame for it. We can't leave that open-ended. If you want a time frame, we should be able to put some kind of, within a year, they should report back or whatever, but
Within this fiscal year?
Well,
Fish-
I'm assuming that they're going to spend the money next, like in the spring, to prepare for their season. I don't know exactly what their money's being spent on, so if within the next fiscal year is acceptable, then that would work.
I would say
that's fine.
by March 31st, 2026.
Perfect.
Seconder agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. Basically, the way I look at it, the bottom line is they had the tournament anyway. And it just, Cuba wasn't able to come.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
I,
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Okay, next item. Council previously agreed to invite the 3 MLAs serving East Hants residents to join council for a group discussion. Staff are seeking council's preference to schedule a meeting, and options for consideration are attached. And councilors, you see them in front of you. Option 1 would be to delay the start of an executive meeting and hold a business meeting prior in room 168. Option 2, a longer lunch break during executive and provide lunch in room 168. Option 3, a supper meeting before a budget meeting. And option 4, some other alternative. So what are your thoughts, councilors? Counselor Dixon.
I have no preference. I don't work full time. I think the sooner the better, and we should get this done as quick as possible. Get our thoughts and our conversations with them done.
Counselor Rhino.
Not in favor of a supper meeting. We all, some of us work, and it's hard to get free to get to meetings as it is, let alone a supper meeting and stuff like that. So that option would be out for me. Why can't we just have a separate night?
We certainly could. That would be an option under number 4, but is it okay, Counselor Garden Cole, I know you work as well.
I was just going to say the least disruptive would be during this busy season, if we want to do it ASAP, I would think would be at lunchtime during executive day, which doesn't affect anything because we're here anyway, other than if lunch is provided. But that's just my take on it. We may have to vote on it.
Any other preferences? Counselor Mitchell?
I'm okay with any option that fits the majority of council, so I'm very flexible on that end.
Well, someone prepared to move an option? Counselor Perry?
One of the things we also have to consider is the houses, I believe, is going to go back to sitting very soon. Their availability might be limited going forward as well. So regardless of what we decide, I think some of it's going to come down to their availability as well. But I would move that we go with option 2, break longer for a lunch break during executive committee meeting and provide a lunch in room 168.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Musa. Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Next item. The Lance Volunteer Fire Department has provided background information to support a request to increase their fire levy by 2 cents. So, Adam, are you taking this one?
Yes, Madam Warren, I'll start here. I know the local councillors have also been in conversations with Lance Fire, but what you would see in front of you, as council recalls, you've in your first budget update at committee meeting, the draft fire levy rates were presented to the council and subsequently the fire departments at the same time. And Lance Fire has come forward requesting a 2-cent increase to their fire levy. And what I would say is that decision probably doesn't need to be made tonight. That can be made as part of your budget meeting conversations. But what you see in front of you tonight is some additional context to some of the rationale they have with the needs of their fire service. Their hall is aging. They are looking in the early stages of planning a new department or a new fire station there. And they also have some equipment replacement, both kind of on the operating side and then also capital heavy equipment from trucks that are on order and so forth. So they were going to provide staff and the counselors with some additional breakdown of their funding and their long-term projections and how they're getting to that 2 cents. I think it's important that the council sees that, or at least at the staff level. We suggested to Chief Orchard he could send it over to the staff and we can kind of work through their financial modeling. But I think what I would say here is this is in front of you tonight for some additional context. And like I mentioned, the local councillors may have some additional discussion with council on this topic.
Do either of the local councillors have anything they want to add at this time? Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair to staff. So I take it from your conversation with Chief Orchard, no response is required to any of these items that he's indicated in his letter at this time. They're going to be in further contact with staff.
Yes, through you, Madam Warden. I think what they're doing in their letter is painting the picture of some of the challenges their current fire station has, and it's defined the need for the future hall. That financial analysis piece, absolutely. Chief Orchard mentioned he was going to send it along to the local councillors or myself later this week, and we would involve our finance team in that conversation. So a decision on the 2 cents, I don't think is required tonight. That really is a budget conversation for council. But I think it's important that council does see some of the pressures that they're facing as a department and some of their rationale. And then council will have to have that discussion in your budget on where you go with the fire rate.
So tonight we would be looking for a motion to send this to budget discussions.
That is correct, Madam Warden.
Counselor Merriam.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate in some of the correspondence that our understanding is that they're still engaging in financial forecasting, and they'll get back to us once they've done the latest financial planning and have that information. So that's my understanding as well. And yeah, I can actually make that motion that we would revisit. I move that we revisit this request once we're further along in our budget process.
We
I'll
have the
second. I'll
seconded
sec.
by Councillor Taylor. Go ahead.
Yep. And I've got a comment as well.
Okay.
But as
ahead.
part of the budgeting, and I'll just make this comment to staff. I don't know if any further discussions have been had about having a greater fire services study, but you know, they're obviously looking for planning quite expensive budgeting here type of thing. And I think in addition to the budgeting for financing purposes, there should be some sort of study done for what is actually needed.
Madam Morton, would you like me just to comment on the question
Yes,
about
and then
the
I have Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Rhino, which to speak, so go ahead, Adam.
Yes, to the comment about a fire service review, what I can say is, I guess, firstly, I can't speak obviously on behalf of the fire service, but I do attend the quarterly chiefs meetings, and at their meeting in December, the chiefs did have a conversation around a potential fire service review. What they did from that meeting subsequently was established a subcommittee of the chiefs of 5 chiefs from throughout the municipality to establish essentially a scope for the rest of the chiefs to consider of a fire service review. That scope, that group actually has had one meeting I've attended as a staff liaison. They've invited me to participate in their discussions, and Calvin Bayard as well, our manager of protective services. And they're having a second meeting coming up here later this week. That scope will go back to the chiefs for discussion. I can't speak to council on where that discussion will go, but if they do decide to move it forward, I think council could anticipate something in March coming to you. They would be looking for the municipality to fund a fire service review if they choose to make that request. There's still quite a bit of dialogue that the chiefs need to have internally, but that is what I know, and that's what you know now. Thank you.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Through you to staff, during the discussions with the increased assessment and also the increase in the levy, was that taken into consideration before the 2-cent increase request?
Through you, Madam Warden. The Lance Fire Chief, I did have a conversation with Chief Orchard last week, and they are aware of their assessment increase is about 56,000 is what I believe was projected on the slide deck at committee level. But they still have a lot of financial pressures coming, and they're trying to plan for that. So to answer your question, yes, they are aware, and yes, they still are maintaining that 2-cent request on top of the 56,000 at this time. Now, that being said, we're waiting for their financial analysis, and they may sift through that and change the request later through the process.
I just remind you, councillors, we're not deciding whether to give a 2-cent increase now. We're just putting it off to budget discussions to have these types of discussion. Councillor Rhino.
Thank you.
Well, it wouldn't be to the motion, but I'd like to make a comment around what.
Well,
Adam
not
said.
until the motion is dealt with. If it's not to the motion. Is there any other discussion to the motion? Councillor Dixon.
I was put my hand up before the motion, so I think I'm allowed to speak. I have no issues
I
with.
apologize, I didn't see you.
Okay, no, that's all right with the new system. That's understandable. I actually, I've been around the fire service for a while, and I think this is the most information, excuse me, that I've seen a department do for an increase. I know Enfield got a letter from the chief, and they got a 2-cent on the levy. I have no issues with approving Lance getting 2 cents now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any discussion to the motion? Councillor
Question.
Musa to the motion.
I'm on the same page with Councilor Dixon, so
No, to the motion. The motion is to refer this to budget discussions.
sounds good.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Now, Councillor Rhino, I will give you a moment.
I'd just like to, I'm glad to hear what Adam has said here today. I'd be in full support, and I think you all know, I've been asking for this for years and years and years, and I hope it does come to fruition. It just amazes me that, you know, along with Lance looking for, have to have a new station, I can tell you, we need a new station down in this area, and then we'll have to buy custom-made trucks. So I think, we don't have the draw from
Counselor, I'm
connections.
going to stop you because I understand you're speaking in support of the review and we all understand that, but we're doing business for decision right now, and I don't want to get too far behind on our agenda, and I'm sure we'll be having many discussions when that recommendation, whatever it is, comes forward from the fire service. Okay, so the next item is the draft agreement between Nova Scotia and East Hants RCMP support staff for council review and approval to sign.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So councilors, this is an agreement that council entered into a few years ago when we discussed the changes to the RCMP contract and hiring additional officers, but also hiring additional court liaison staff to provide RCMP officers with some additional administrative support at the local level at our detachment. They had some difficulty filling those two positions for the first probably year and a half. So the original agreement is expiring this spring. And I would draw your attention to section 2.2 of this article that just extends this agreement to agree to pay for those two positions as a pilot project until May 6, 2026. Normally I would sign contracts like this without having to come back to council, but where that came into a new fiscal year that extends beyond the one we're doing a budget for, I wasn't comfortable doing that. So I'm just looking for authority from council to extend that into 2026. That would, as I mentioned to council before, we will be back to council long before then to make these positions either permanent or to know whether the pilot would continue. So we can give these folks who are in these jobs some certainty as far as moving forward with or without a pilot. So for now, I'm looking for authority to sign the contract. Thank you, Madam
Councilor
Warden.
Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Yeah, I'll move that we sign and extend this to 2026.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Seconded by Councilor Mitchell. Councilor Dixon, you had a question?
I was gonna second.
Oh, okay. So any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fine.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Next item. Correspondence regarding affordability and ice time scheduling for the East Hants Skating Club. Reports regarding the sportsplex and rates will be coming forward during budget discussions, and staff's recommendation would be to defer this item until after council has those reports. So councilors, what are your wishes? Councilor Perry.
I would move we defer these reports until such time that we get our staff presents rates during the budget process.
We have
Second.
a seconder by Councilor Mitchell. Councilor Tingley, you were on before the motion.
I was just going to make the motion myself, so
Okay. All right, any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion has carried. Next item, a letter from Kim Maslin, the Minister of Emergency Management, moving towards consistent and impactful emergency response. This letter is requesting municipalities take specific actions that may be a change to current processes and will have an impact on our operations. So Kim, are you taking this
Yeah,
one?
I can take this one. So councilors, you've all had time to read the letter, I'm sure. It was sent out to all mayors, CAOs, and wardens in the province, talking about the support of municipalities when the provincial centers for emergency operations activate. A couple of concerns in the letter that I thought you may want to respond to, and you may not want to respond to, that's fine too. You can wait to see where it goes. But just to draw your attention to the requests in the letter, and they are not you musts, but I think without a response, they could very easily become you must. So one of them is requesting that municipalities activate our emergency centers, coordination centers, when the province activates at level 2. So that would be that the municipalities in those affected areas would activate, which is not an unreasonable request, depending on what the emergency is, of course. If it's something that, you know, we're monitoring, then we may choose to stay in monitoring mode as opposed to activating our ECC, because we simply don't have we don't have full-time staff in emergency management. We don't have round-the-clock on-call folks like the province would have. So by activating the ECC, somebody has to be doing that function. One of the primary concerns of this letter is the last sentence in the first event is best practice dictates that activation at level 2 cannot be virtual. So it's suggesting that that we would not activate our ECCs virtually, that we would have to come into the center here based on the methods of communication and the redundancy in our communication. We actually have communication quite well established for the folks who, for myself, Adam, Calvin, and Kelly, the 4 people who are responsible for this. We do have satellite internet available to us. We have TMR2 radios, and we have our cell phones. So the implications of if the province comes down and says to municipalities, when you activate, you must activate in person, I would flag that could have significant consequences on our operations and our people. They're not saying that yet, but with everything going on with emergency management in the province, we may want to just point that out to them. The other point that they've made in the letter, that when the EOC is activated, they want a monitored phone number to be available to citizens during the activation, which is not something we currently have in place for East Hants. We have always gone with the same message that emergency management offices across North America have gone with, which is you need to be able to support yourself for 72 hours, and the municipality will help. You know, if it's the dead of winter, then we would step in with comfort centers and whatnot. But this suggests that we would have to have a 24-hour telephone line that could help people with things like snow removal, receiving medications, checking on loved ones, etc., which is not a service we currently provide. They also indicate that if we can't meet that at the local level, that we could then share that information with 211 and they could deal with it at the provincial level. So that is a change to what we've been working with in the past with our 72-hour, you know, take care of yourself in an emergency, have a kit, have water, have all of those things, medications and whatnot. So again, I just wanted to flag that for you, that this letter, although, you know, all of the things in here are around care and concern, these recommendations or suggestions, should they go any further than this, would be a significant impact, not only to your budgets, but also to the people who work for you in EMO, who don't work on call 24/7. It would be significantly difficult for us to provide this support. So Madam Ward, I'm not sure if there's anything to come of this. Perhaps a letter back to the province, or if you just want to leave it for now and see where they go. But I wanted to make sure council had it on their radar.
I would just add that it would be difficult for us to make these changes. Just imagine other smaller municipalities. It's, you know, certainly would be, I would think, a challenge for many. So what are your wishes? Should we send a letter highlighting the concerns the CAO has outlined, just so that they are on the province's radar? Councillor Tingley.
I haven't thought this thing completely through, but the issue with the requirement to go into the office and not deal with things virtually, I think that could create a problem. I think that could create an emergency itself. Uh, I think you should be able to deal with it virtually if you're able to deal with it, and that's the best way to deal with it. The third item you were talking about, not providing or providing support after 72 hours. I like the idea of having somebody available sooner when there's an emergency, but I'd be interested in what others would say. But that's really the only comments. I do have a concern with that having to making it a requirement to come in the office when there's that emergency. That second item you had a concern with, because I think that could create an emergency itself.
Counselor Dixon, did
I
you?
was basically gonna say this same item as Councillor Tingley. I mean, why staff something when we don't need it right away? We should have everybody ready for the 72 hours is probably the most important thing. And I think with Calvin now on staff, that will eventually be stressed and put in place. Thank you.
So does someone wish to move a motion that we perhaps write the province and just gently indicate our concerns with these possibilities?
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Moved by Counselor Dixon, seconded by Counselor Tingley. Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. The last item that was the last item of
Yes.
correspondence for decision. Now we move on to setting summer ice rates at the East Hants Sportsplex. And I see Alana has popped on, so over to you, Alana.
Thank you, through you, Madam Warden. So certainly with last week's agenda and such, we opted with council approval to move the overarching sort of rate discussion as part of budget deliberations. But something that we'd like to actually have council consider is to approve summer rates. And the reason being for that is staff are suggesting that Ice Pad B could be maintained in the facility for the summer season. And that is certainly part of the motion showing that we're looking for council approval to have Ice Pad B in from June 15th until August 31st. And then also looking at charging out a non-prime rate for the summer, and the numbers are there. With jurisdictional scan, there's really no consistency as to what we've seen with other organizations for summer rates. Some charge prime, some charge non-prime. And to encourage utilization, we'd really like to suggest non-prime rates. And then what this approval would allow us to do is actually put it out to user groups that we are looking to do this. And there has been some interest, but it could certainly gauge interest. And then we can start with the whole reviewing of the booking process and seeing what that looks like. So really it is sort of time sensitive because we have had some groups reach out and inquire about this. And that's the purpose of this memo in advance of the rate discussion as part of budget.
Thank you. All right, who's up? Okay, I've got Counselor Mitchell.
Thank you, Warden, through the staff. These rates are break-even rate or?
So it's
a
an
loss- a loss
again,
leader?
it's sort of part of the overarching rate discussion. We look at jurisdictional scan. We do look at sort of cost of the facility, but typically non-prime rate. And again, it's hard to say break even versus not break even because we haven't actually had the rental option for the ice pad for the summer. But certainly that's part of the overarching discussion. So it's a bit of a tricky one to answer without actually knowing how much utilization we get. And the thing is, we really look at this particular rate as non-prime because we want to encourage that utilization, certainly for the non-prime season, as it's something that would be new for us.
Based on that, Madam Warden, I'll move that council approve the ice and Ice Pad B be maintained for the summer, June 15th to August 31st, and rented at non-prime rates, and that rates for the summer be set at $117.39 for general users, and $223.36 for corporate users, HST not included.
We have a
Second.
seconder, seconded by Counselor Merriam. On before the motion, Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I was just going to comment that spring hockey and people who are organizing that, or summer hockey schools or whatever, they start early. So I can see that this is time sensitive, even though we are not yet into February. So I was just going to approve the motion or make the motion, and that's it for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Counselor Perry.
In full support of the motion, I just want to say kudos to staff. One of the things we looked at when we took over the facility was increasing the usage and of this facility for the ability to make revenue and have it shine in the community. So I believe opening the ice pad and allowing it to groups such as Councillor Garden Cole said that are already starting to look can only be beneficial for the long-term use and the long-term viability of the facility.
Any further discussion on the motion? You ready for the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? So the motion is passed by a vote of 10-1 with Counselor Rhino voting nay. Okay, next item on our agenda. We'll move into committee reports. And we will start with the Accessibility Advisory Committee report. Over to you, Counselor Tingley.
The committee held its meeting on January 20th, 2025 at the Lloyd E. Matheson Center. The following items were discussed at the meeting. Selection of chairperson and vice chairperson. Councillor Tingley was appointed chairperson. Councillor Dixon was appointed vice chairperson. Accessibility background presentation. For the first meeting, the committee, the manager and planning provided a background presentation to the committee on accessibility, the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act, municipal accessibility plan. The manager of planning discussed that the provincial government requires the plan to be reviewed and updated, and the work to update the 2021 plan is currently underway. Emergency management and accessibility. The manager of protective services discussed their role in the emergency management coordinator with the municipality. The committee discussed the importance of a 72-hour go-to bag and plans for the communicating this to the vulnerable people. The committee also discussed networking, family, friends, and having things in place prior to the event or disaster to ensure someone was able to assist them with their needs. Accessibility plan monitoring report. The manager of planning presented a draft version of the accessibility plan monitoring report. The action items were or have been completed, and the action items currently being worked on were highlighted. As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Second it.
Seconded by Counselor Dixon. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Next, we will move to the Corporate and Residential Services report. Over to you, Counselor Garden Cole. Oh, you're on mute, Counselor.
Thank you, Madam Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on January 21st, 2025, and the following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. First item, Bylaw F400-10, an amendment to Bylaw F400, Tax Exemption Bylaw, first reading. The municipality enacted Bylaw F400, a bylaw that exempts nonprofit and charitable organizations from paying property tax. A review of properties receiving tax exemption under the bylaw is completed annually to ensure the organizations continue to meet eligibility criteria. Amendments to the bylaw are recommended based on the findings during the annual review. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that Council give first reading to Bylaw F400-10, an amendment to Bylaw F400, Tax Exemption Bylaw, and be amended to reflect the following changes. Add property number 010788852, Tots Academy Child Care Society to Schedule B. Remove property number 000888897, Anglican Church of Canada, Christchurch from Schedule A. Remove property number 105600985, Corridor Community Option Society. Update addresses. Property number 105609777, Corridor Community Option Society to 201 Park Road. Property number 078400764, Hants North Food Bank to 7070 Highway 236. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Musa. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously.
Item number 2, procurement policy update, low value threshold. The low value threshold in the council procurement policy has been at 5,000 since the first modern procurement policy was adopted by council back in 2012. This is the threshold at which the requirement changes from due diligence to the requirement to request a minimum of 3 quotations. The nature of business and the value of transactions has changed considerably over the last several years. The $5,000 threshold is out of touch with the current costs of goods, services, and construction. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that Council amend their procurement policy as attached to the executive agenda January 21st, 2025, as well as change the financial guidelines for volunteer fire departments to reflect the same changes. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded by Counselor Mitchell. Any discussion on the motion? You ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor? Oh, Counselor Tingley, you had a question?
No, I was just voting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you. Third item, 2025-26 draft budget, preliminary information. The director presented preliminary information on the 2025-26 draft budget with more to follow during the budget meetings commencing next week. Fourth item, Rural Transit Solutions Fund, capital funding for public transit. The federal government's transit capital funding stream for rural communities, the Rural Transit Solutions Fund, is now accepting applications until March 4th, 2025. There is an opportunity for East Hants to apply to the Rural Transit Solutions Fund for up to 80% of the total estimated capital cost for implementing public transit in East Hants. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that East Hants apply to the Rural Transit Solutions Fund to support the $2,405,000 capital costs associated with implementing phase 1 of the battery electric bus strategy for public transit in East Hants. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Tingley. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I would just ask Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I would just like to comment on this. While I am not against transit and maybe supporting transit in the future, I'm just not in support of applying for these funds at this time due to the fact that while we are partially down the road of talking about transit, I don't think that we are this far down the road. I realize that it's a time sensitive issue, and I hope that funds become available should we decide to go the transit route. Similar funds become available in the future, but I can't support it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Would you keep your hands up, please, so I can count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favor. Contrary minded. The motion is passed by a vote of 8-3 with myself, Counselor Rhino, and Counselor Garden Cole voting nay. Back to you, Counselor Garden Cole.
Item number 5, dog tag registrations. Council requested a staff report on the value to continue with the dog tag registration program. The report provided an overview of the program. The Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to Council that Council continues to maintain a dog tag registration program and that Council consider implementing a lifetime dog registration fee option and instruct staff to bring back draft amendments to the municipal fee policy. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Perry. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Back to you,
Oh, as chair of the
Councilor
committee, I
Hall.
move the adoption of this report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary?
No.
Motion has carried. Turning to our agenda, we will go to the Infrastructure and Operations Committee report. Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on the 21st of January 2025 in council chambers. The following motion is coming forward as a result of that meeting. Solid Waste Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR. The new province-wide curbside recycling program will launch December 1st, 2025. This program is being established due to a change in the Environmental Act regulations from August 2023. The regulations require the product producers responsible to manage their product packaging to end of the life cycle, including collection, transportation, and processing costs. The Infrastructure and Operations Committee recommend that Council have a letter sent to the circular materials stating that the municipality of East Hants interest to continuing to explore East Hants managing curbside collection program on behalf of Circular Materials are part of a transition related to the Extended Producer Responsibility Program. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Seconded.
Seconded by Counselor Hebb. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously.
As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Mitchell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion has passed unanimously. Next, we will go to the Planning Advisory Committee report. Over to you, Counselor Mitchell.
The committee held its regular meeting on January 21, 2025 in council chambers. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. Number one, PLN 24-012, the Shaw Group Limited, MPS and LUB amendments. The municipality has received an application from the Shaw Group Limited to change the land use designation and zone of property and lands to allow for the construction of 4 8-unit stacked townhouse buildings. Council gave approval to schedule the public information meeting, PIM, during the council policy and in-camera meeting held on January 21, 2025. The PIM will be held on February 4th, 2025. Mini homes as accessory dwelling units. In June of 2024, East Hants Municipal Council passed a motion directing staff to explore the possibility of permitting small mini home dwellings as accessory dwelling units. The report outlined the current regulations for accessory dwelling units and proposed changes to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw to allow mini homes to be used as accessory dwelling units. Council gave approval to schedule the public information meeting, PIM, during the council policy and in-camera meeting held on January 21, 2025. The PIM will be held on February 4, 2025. The Planning Advisory Committee also recommends that council authorize staff to come back with an additional report regarding the design requirements for accessory dwelling units with consideration around stick-built units, and that the report be brought back as soon as possible so that it can be dealt with within a timely manner. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor
Kingley.
Kingley. Any discussion on the motion? You ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Counselor Mitchell.
Concept plans and rezoning applications. The staff report addressed motion C24, bracket 138. Move the staff look at circumstances surrounding the rezoning of land. Planning staff will be making improvements to the communication with the public regarding concept plans. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council direct staff to improve communication to the public as outlined in the staff report titled Motion C24, bracket 138, Rezoning and Concept Plans, as attached to the Executive Committee agenda dated January 21, 2025. As chair of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Musa. Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Back to you, Counselor.
Housing Accelerator Fund Initiative, Village Core, Zone Density Increase. East has entered into an agreement with CMHC for Housing Accelerator funding. As part of the agreement, East Hants has to complete 9 initiatives. The 9th initiative is to increase the density in all village core designations and zones by permitting 16 dwelling units as of right through site plan approval. The initiative needs to be completed to fulfill the terms of the funding agreement. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council authorize staff to schedule a public information meeting to consider the proposal to amend the East Hants official community plan to increase the density in the village core designation and zone. As chair of the committee, I so move.
We have a seconder.
Second.
Seconded by, I saw Counselor Hebb. So, any discussion on the motion? We'll go to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Contrary? Okay, the motion is passed by a vote of 9-2 with Counselor Rhino and Counselor Garden Cole voting nay. Back to you, Counselor Mitchell.
Bylaw P 800-2, an amendment to Bylaw P 800, civic addressing bylaw, follow-up report, repeat first reading. In December 2024, Planning and Development staff reviewed Schedule A of the civic address bylaw P 800 with regards to public street and private road naming guidelines and a recommended amendments to the bylaw. The proposed amendments to Schedule A provide additional guidance to the civic addressing coordinator in determining whether a road name is acceptable. New information result in additions to the bylaw requiring first reading be given again. First reading of bylaw P 800-2 will be done later during the council meeting as recommended by the Planning Advisory Committee. Single access and 100 lot option report, vulnerable assessment results. Staff have completed vulnerability assessment on each of the areas with over 100 lots with a single access and have developed a method of determining instances where it may be acceptable to allow more than 100 lots to be created on a single access. The Planning Advisory Committee tabled the report for further discussion at the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. As chair of the committee, I move the adoption of this report.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Merriam. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. Well, folks, I'm afraid to say it, but we're moving right along on this stormy Wednesday night. So next is first reading, the repeat first reading of bylaw P 800-2. So back to you, Counselor Mitchell.
First reading bylaw P 800-2, an amendment to bylaw P 800, civic addressing bylaw. Council previously gave first reading to this bylaw in December 2024, but requested additional information which was provided to the Planning Advisory Committee at their meeting on January 21, 2025. As a result, first reading can be given again with second reading to follow in February 2025. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends to Council that Council give first reading to bylaw P 800-2, a bylaw to amend bylaw P 800, civic addressing bylaw. As chair of the Planning Advisory Committee, I so move.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Musa. Is there any discussion on the motion? Go to the vote. All those in favor?
I,
All right.
Contrary?
Again,
Motion is passed unanimously. Next on the agenda is first reading of bylaw F-400-10, an amendment to bylaw F-400, the tax exemption bylaw. Over to you, Councillor Garden Cole. No, you're on mute, Councillor.
The Corporate and Residential Services Committee reviewed the staff report and recommendations at their meeting held January 21st, 2025. The Planning Advisory Committee recommends that council give first reading to bylaw F-400-10, an amendment to bylaw F-400, tax exemption bylaw, and be amended to reflect the following changes. Add property number 010-78852, Tots Academy Child Care Society to Schedule B. Remove property number 000-88897, Anglican Church of Canada, Christchurch, from Schedule A. Remove property number 1056-0985, Corridor Community Option Society. Update addresses property number 105-60977, Corridor Community Option Society to 201 Park Road. Property number 0784-0764, Hants North Food Bank to 7070 Highway 236. As chair of the Planning Advisory Committee, I so move.
Corporate and Residential Services Committee. There's a misprint in the,
As chair of the Corporate and Residential Services Committee, I so move.
second.
moved and seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
We'll go to the vote. All those in favor?
I,
Aye. Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously. So going back to our agenda, that brings us to the warden's report. So I would turn the chair over to Deputy Warden McPhee. And not a long report. This month, counselors certainly had an enjoyable break over the Christmas and New Year's holidays, and there were not a lot of meetings or anything around that time. Interesting to be back on Zoom tonight after quite a long absence, but given the road conditions in different areas of the municipality, we just felt that it was perhaps prudent not to add to accidents that I had heard about around the municipality. I've attended the directors' meetings on the 6th, 20th, 27th of January, the RCMP workshop on the 16th of January, and as well the surplus property workshop on the 23rd of January. I've had some requests for certificates for residents, which will be coming forward at later dates once they're presented. And other than that, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Oh, back to you, Warden.
Thank you. We'll now go to business from counselors. Now, this is going to be interesting because everyone keeps changing places on the screen. So I'll write you down as you do your business. So we'll start with who's in the upper left-hand corner of my screen now, Counselor Merriam.
Great. Good evening. Since our last regular council meeting on December the 18th, I've been very engaged with constituency work, and I've enjoyed attending community events, including the Community Fun Day at the Sportsplex on December 23rd, and a New Year's event at the Milford Recreation Center, and various council-related meetings as well. I'm introducing a motion this evening that I shared with councilors on Sunday, January the 19th, and it's regarding enhancing an existing crosswalk in Milford at the Milford Recreation Center. Milford Rec is a focal point in the community, housing various events, including the upcoming Milford Meltdown. Excuse me. High school students regularly cross here for daily lunch hour breaks, and it is a busy crossing point for various community events. As you can see from the photos in the email sent earlier, there are no zebra markings on the crossing, and accessibility from the curb could be improved. I would like to explore how this crossing could be enhanced to improve safety in our community. Therefore, I move that a letter be sent to the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works to collaborate on improvements to the existing crosswalk in Milford along Highway 2 near the Milford Recreation property. Excuse me, on improving crosswalk effectiveness through items such as the use of zebra markings and accessible features coming from the sidewalk side of the road. Thank you.
We have a
Second.
seconder.
Second.
Counselor Hebb, seconded by Counselor Hebb. Any discussion on the motion?
Question?
Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Anything further, Counselor Merriam?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Counselor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Warden. It's been a fairly busy month. I'm involved with the board of CCOA, and I'm on part of the finance committee. We've been meeting about twice a week now, getting the finances in line and getting opening up the new building. It looks like we're going to be around the end of February. And I'd like to say one thing positive. It looks like it may be without a mortgage. So I think that's been a venture that's been well worked on and well presented and will be well used in the future. So hopefully we can stick to that. I've also attended all the council meetings, the RCMP annual review, the accessibility advisory committee, surplus property. And I attended the Arrowhead Park Residential Association meeting. They meet bi-weekly, and some of their concerns is sealing the road, protecting that. And I'm going to send the director of roads, I guess Jesse, an email on that just to see if there's anything we can do to give them some advice or some help. They discussed the wildfire problem, and since that discussion, Kelvin has sent them their study that was done by the department, by the municipality some time ago. Actually, it was done by the Natural Resources, so that'll be done. And they're also looking at the possibility of trying to find a second way out. So they're doing their work and keeping busy. Spent a lot of time at the rink. I was there to the public skate on the 23rd, which went over quite well. And I'm impressed with the way the operation of the rink has come over the last several years. And the Junior C will be holding a fundraising auction on February the 15th. Everybody is invited, and especially if you can make a donation, would be great. And the only issue I've had really right now in the area I have is problem with provincial culverts. And I have a call into our MLA, and hopefully we'll get a response from him. I did send a letter that corresponds back to Councillor Cole, Sandy Garden Cole, and hopefully we can put our thoughts together. And if anybody else has any culvert issues, we'd gladly include that and maybe meet with our MLA and see if we can do something to get some of these issues resolved. So that's basically everything I've had for the month. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Again, kind of like getting back into the cycle of things. Things kicked off. We're kind of busy. Meeting with quite a few residents over the Christmas break, and they're interested to see what's going on. Voter fatigue has definitely set in with them over the last little while. One of the things I heard a lot was we don't want another election anytime soon, and well, I guess we're going to be heading for one possibly sooner than we expect. In one of those meetings, I met with a group of residents, and again, they're worried about the quarry. And with the new provincial government being elected and people shuffling around, I know we sent a letter to the minister before about our not supporting any expansion of the quarry in Mount Uniacke. And I was just wondering if we could just resend that letter once again and CC all three MLAs so it's back on their radar as they start their new term. There's been a lot of changeover in some of the assistants. Met with one of the MLAs last week, myself and Councillor Musa, and that was one of the things that they said to us was they're having a lot of switching of assistants has happened because they weren't prepared actually to win such a large majority that they are looking for assistance. And so in some other areas, I know at the library, I received a notification of one of our better members of the public library system has accepted a job with the Justice Department. So I could definitely see a lot more people getting possibly pinched in the future. So I'll make the motion that we resend the letter that was approved by Municipal Council against any expansion of the quarry in Mount Uniacke off the Uniacke Mines Road.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Mitchell. Any discussion on the motion? We'll go to the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary, motion is passed unanimously. Anything
Thank you,
else,
Madam
Counselor
Warden.
Perry?
Also on the list, the Uniacke Legion, Branch 165, is currently going through the process of creating a second monument in Mount Uniacke. Due to the first monument's property size being so small and proximity to the road, and Public Works has refused to grant the ability to block the road for the ceremony. So people are starting to spill into the road. It's becoming a safety issue. So the original one that was built by the community and stuff will remain in place. However, they're going to construct a new one, which will allow for better accessibility, better safety for everybody to attend, because the ceremony is attended by literally hundreds of people every Remembrance Day, and it literally was becoming almost a safety issue. The firefighters and the RCMP in attendance actually were lining the back of the crowd to become visible for ongoing and passing traffic, especially the dump trucks. So because of that, I noticed that we're moving the Shubenacadie cenotaph. So what I would like to do is I would like to move a motion that the municipality provide funds for 2 flagpoles at the new Mount Uniacke Cenotaph Park, one to be used to fly the municipal flag, and one to be used as part of the Truth and Reconciliation to fly the Mi'kmaq Grand Council flag. And that the funding for that come from the same source of funding used to move the Shubenacadie cenotaph.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Just asking, do we know where that funding came from? Carl, I see you had your hand up. Do you?
Yes, I'd just like to say first, I don't think there's been a decision to move the Shubenacadie cenotaph. We talked about it. It was sent out for the design, but we're in support of it. But that's all part of the Housing and Acceleration Fund with the development of the village core in Shubenacadie, so the parking and that. So just like to say, but so far I don't think we've actually made a decision to move the cenotaph.
I see the CAO nodding her head. Do you have anything to add to that, Kim?
Through you, Madam Warden, I believe it's all wrapped up in a bow with the budget, and we're moving forward with that work. I know people were out looking at the little tree and whatnot. I believe we have made the decision to move forward.
Have we, do we know, the motion says from the same funding, do we know if it would qualify for HAF funds?
I would have to check that, Madam Warden, but I think in general it would be that those funds can be used for operating. I'm not sure if they're tied directly to the initiatives, but you'd be looking at a general fund expense regardless. The Housing Accelerator Fund would be a general fund expense.
Any for Councillor McPhee?
Yes, I thought there would be or thank you, Warden, through you to the CAO, wouldn't there be a public information meeting before we made a final decision on the development?
No.
No?
Through you, Madam Warden, there wouldn't.
Any further discussion on Councillor Perry's motion? I guess I would just ask for clarity to fund the flagpoles, which I certainly support. I have no problem with, but who is going to order them and approve what cost? I don't know if there are various prices for flagpoles or not.
So their price for flagpoles that they've received from their vendor was about $7,000 a pole, with the majority of the cost being the concrete abutment it has to be placed in. But they are open that if the municipality has or knows of a vendor that they can be installed at a cheaper rate, they were willing to go with that as well. But right now, the cost that they have is about $7,000 a pole.
So Madam Warden, just for some clarification, if I could, did the motion include a dollar value?
No, it did not.
No.
Okay, it should have a clear dollar value of say up
Okay,
to
so it would be
$15,000
up to
or
$15,000.
It's a seconder in agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? We'll go to the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion is contrary, Councillor Rhino?
No, I want
Okay.
to ask the
Motion
question.
passed unanimously. So back to you, Councillor Perry.
That's all I have. So for this time period, things are starting to ramp up with budget season. Meetings with different groups as well as the fire department are pending. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Rhino.
All right, just a few things. I attended the levy at the Knoll Legion on January 1st. On January 21st, I presented an 80th birthday certificate to Mr. Edward Hatch of Selma. Very appreciative. So, and I attended all the councilors' meetings and executive meetings and other meetings there pertaining to council. That's pretty well my report, but I just have a question concerning this flagpole. Now, I supported the motion for Councillor Perry to get flagpoles for the cenotaphs. And I understand that there's something to do with the cenotaph moving or whatever discussion we're around Councillor McPhee's. My question is would flagpoles be available or made available to all cenotaphs in and around the rural area? And would that fit under the Housing Accelerator Fund?
So through you, Madam Warden, I am going to have to check around the Housing Accelerator Fund if that's a viable source, and we would come back to council with a recommendation if it's not. I guess the caution I would have is that flagpoles need someone to maintain them and take the flags up and down and put them at half mast when needed. It's not without the attention paid. So a lot of cenotaphs aren't attached to a building. Like once you move it to a place like the Legion, they then get attached to a building that has a caretaker and whatnot. So I would just caution that that's probably not something that would be easily done. It's up to you, council. If council wants to put flagpoles up at all the cenotaphs, then that would be something that you would have to look into and prepare a bigger project for. There are a lot of cenotaphs in East Hants.
I understand there's a lot of cenotaphs, but it seems like the Councillor Perry's motion, I do believe, was around the Housing Accelerator Fund paying for it, so why couldn't we make a motions for the cenotaphs in the rural areas who do not have flagpoles to, if this fund is going to be used for putting flagpoles up, I think it should be freely available to all cenotaphs out there.
I would just comment that the CAO did clarify to Councillor Perry's motion when questioned that the Housing Accelerator Fund was a general fund amount, and regardless, it would be a general fund grant, and she was going to check the Housing Accelerator Fund first, and she might have to come back and say, we can't take it from that. Was that my understanding correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I guess my point is, if it is taken from that, I think it should be made available to everyone across the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Rhino?
No.
Next, Councillor Mitchell. You're on mute, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Warden, through you. Just a few points. So I just, on December 23rd, I attended the fun day at the Sportsplex and had a
You just
Oh.
muted, Counselor Mitchell.
You're mute again, Counselor Mitchell.
I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah.
December 23rd, I attended the Fun Day at the Sportsplex and had a chance to see people I don't get to see very often who are working during the week. January 16th, I attended the RCMP Annual Performance Plan. Also on December the 16th, in that evening, in that morning, the Equity and Community Wellness Committee for NSFM met. They had a request come in from a town in the valley, and the request came forward about a basic income guarantee. And there were 16 municipalities that were mentioned in that request, and NSFM sent it to our committee to look at and discuss, and then also send it back to NSFM Board of Directors to see if it needs to go towards the province. On the 23rd, the surplus property workshop was enjoyable and entertaining. Lots of information I picked up. The Sportsplex board meeting was on the 27th, and finally we're getting closer to the East End Arena Association getting everything in order and eventually being dissolved. The Colchester East End Regional Library was supposed to meet on the 28th, but it was changed because the director was away. I'm not sure what the next date is. It was tentatively February 12th, but that might not happen. The resident called about the community report back in 2011 that had in the village core zone a sidewalk going down Elmsdale Road, and I'm just asking staff if that is true and if it's something is going to be considered, and I'll get back to him. I mentioned to the director before, and it hasn't. The answer was no, but he's asking me to ask again. So I'm asking if there's a sidewalk going down from the medical center towards the bridge.
Jesse?
Through you, Madam Warden, currently there is not a project identified for that location in the 5-year plan. You won't see it in the capital budget. It's been looked at and talked about, but it's not an active project at this point yet.
Thank you. Anything else, Counselor Mitchell?
And last item, February is African Heritage Month, and I'm just looking to see what the municipality has planned for that month, if anything.
CAO?
Through you, Madam Warden, our efforts around African Heritage Month are around our communication with our public, bringing awareness to the month. We also have historically had banners and whatnot in our public places.
Okay. That's all, Madam Warden. Thank you,
Thank
CAO.
you. Next, Counselor Hebb.
Thank you, Warden. Excuse me, December 30th, I presented an 80th birthday certificate to a longtime resident, Wendy McCorkle. On the 16th, I attended the RCMP workshop. On the 17th, the Northern Waste Meeting Committee met. And on the 23rd, I attended the property surplus meeting. Other than that, that's it, Warden. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'd just like to say Happy New Year to all the residents of East Hants. We're kind of jumping back into it in January with lots of meetings and budget just around the corner. So we're getting right back into the swing of things. I'm being contacted by numerous groups who are applying for DFR funds, so it's encouraging to see that our community groups are making plans for the upcoming year. I've had multiple complaints about the number 2 highway in these past months, not just recently, but over the past 6 months or so. And some of the conditions, the potholes, the edges of the road that are broken down. And on their behalf, I contacted the area manager for Public Works. And he responded, I asked if there was any plans for repaving or for for, you know, any kind of improvements, significant improvements. He said that they had nothing in their agenda at this time other than continuing to do the same, you know, pothole filling and that kind of thing that they have been doing. And if there were any areas of real concern to let them know. So that was the outcome, and I responded back to a few residents with that. As well, I just let me see what I've got here. I forwarded an email to council regarding, and this is a resident from Sam Crescent, which is at the top of Tyler. It's actually a resident who is in Councillor Mitchell's district now with the new boundary changes, but travels through District 1 to get out of their subdivision. His concern is about parking and what he feels is inadequate parking space for the houses up there. And I know we talked about this when the development was happening. He did reach out to the director, and I'm just wondering if the director might be able to comment. He was proposed that maybe there be he's parking on the road. He says that there's 3 vehicles in that, you know, 3 vehicles in their household, and that he has to have different people living in the household in order to pay for it. So he's wondering if the possibility of parking on one side of the road might be feasible, if there could be designated parking on one side of the road, such that we did in Concord Way, I guess. So just wondering if the director might be able to comment on that.
Jesse?
Through Madam Warden, wintertime, no, absolutely not. From a road clearing stance and being able to clear and operate and function, in the season, everything's really tight up there, and it's been something we've been reviewing and talking as staff. There's several areas that don't meet any parking criteria. Both at the top of Tyler and on Sam. In theory, like within the Motor Vehicle Act, you can go in and say, no, you can't park here, but without no parking signs, it's not necessarily obvious for the public. And we need to potentially make that more clear in some areas. There's just no space, or there's things like parking in front of driveways. You're actually not allowed to do that because those gaps are meant to allow for emergency vehicles to be able to get through. So people can pull off in front of those areas, emergency vehicle comes through. And it's a really challenging area, just with how we've made choices as a municipality to enable some of these higher density with the row homes and townhomes. Those are the offset choices. So more density, tight driveway spacing makes parking challenging, and so those homes aren't meant for 3 cars. Quite frankly, they're not. Most of them aren't meant for 2. And that's where we're at up there. It's really not meant for that. But that's not how necessarily folks are purchasing them, and it's creating these conflicts. It's really challenging. So I think the review of that area is going to go into next summer, but I wouldn't recommend any changes currently in the winter season. Just we need to be able to clear roads in peak winter season, and then really assess once we get through that.
Okay, thank you. And I understand, and when I did respond, I did say that when it comes to snow clearing, you know, that it's all, everything's off the table because you have to be able to clear both sides of the road, obviously. So with Concord Way, it's you can park on one side of the road, but during snow clearing, there's no parking on the road. Okay, so it's just that's just understood. Okay, well, Sam Crescent is incredibly tight. As I say, we talked about this when it was going up. I recall someone having a Tahoe that the front bumper was right up against their garage door and the back bumper was actually overhanging that could possibly impede clearing the sidewalk. So you really have to see it to believe it. And as a council, I encourage anyone to go up and see it because we are making these decisions. And we approved some development in Elmsdale that will be coming up, an extension of the subdivision there by the mill. And the parking is, I can't remember what it was, but it was a controversial topic on how little parking. When you've got $600,000 units, obviously that's going to be a 2-income family or possibly more that's going to be paying for those. We have to remember that. You know, density is great, but if you don't have the room for these people to park, then we are facing the issues that the fallout of that. So I just wanted to point that out to council and for anyone who may be watching. And my final issue is that I've been at the rink a few times lately and the rink is looking really spiffy, the Sportsplex. I just wanted to commend the staff on that. And as well, I was in the Dome watching my nephew play soccer, and I was amazed by how clean and vibrant the artificial turf was in the Dome. I don't think I've ever seen it look like that, or not since it was new. So kudos to the staff at the Sportsplex. It's looking really great, and people are noticing it and appreciating it. So thank you. That's it from District 1.
And you're up next, Councillor Tingley.
Actually, I had a question and a comment regarding Councillor Garden Cole's comments about the parking. I've been up around that area and it is quite tight. And I was reading an article in Stats Canada the other day indicating that 45% of Canadians are challenged to meet daily expenses. And I'm just wondering how many families are starting to live together, like 2 or 3 families living in the same place, because I see other areas around the corridor area where parking is getting pretty tight as well. And I'm wondering if we need to do some changes with our planning around parking going forward. I'm not sure what we can do with the prior like Tyler Street and Sam Street, you know, which are very tight. But do we need to make some changes going forward, knowing that or if families are going to start living together more, 2 or 3 generations, because you are going to have, you know, mostly 2 or at least 2 vehicles in most driveways. And if there's 2 or 3 kids living at home, you could have 4, 5, 6 vehicles in the driveway. I know we got to plow the snow, but people got to have a place to park their vehicles as well. So I'm just wondering if staff have any comments around that.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Interesting topic. I think we talked before several times actually about parking standards and how a lot of municipalities in Canada are going the other way. They're reducing or in some cases eliminating parking standards. And I guess because of our unique circumstance, we're not able to do that because of the reliance on cars. I think certainly through the 26 plan review, we're planning to start next year, that'll be a topic again for discussion, and whether what we require is adequate and if we need to increase it for townhouses or single unit dwellings or what. Yeah, so I don't have, and as in terms of multiple families in one location, I haven't seen that in any census data yet. You know, we still hover around, the average is 2.5 people per dwelling unit in East Hants. So, you know, when the next census comes out, I guess we'll pay attention to that. One of the other things that, again, other municipalities are moving away or moving, not necessarily away, but reducing parking requirements is because they have transit. And if you have transit, that helps, right? You don't need a car for every person to make every trip. But I guess that's another decision for another day.
Good answer. Thanks. I'll just continue on with my report here. January 10th, I attended the Institute of Catastrophic Loss Reduction webinar that NSFM partner with about wildfires in Canada. They basically just reviewed where the fires are occurring, what was known about the risks prior to the fires, what action was done, if any, and prior to the fires, as the fires were happening, and after the fires occurred. And they also spoke about the Los Angeles fire. January 13th, I attended the Department of Municipal Affairs monthly training for elected officials webinar. It was on procedure potholes and common mistakes made around the council table. January 16th, I had a meeting with Stantec at their request regarding the stormwater management needs assessment study they're doing to for the province to inform how to support municipalities on stormwater management. And just while I'm on that, Councillor Dixon spoke about problems with culverts along the corridor area. The municipality during this sewer and water capacity study had a study on those culverts. So there is some information from a 2023 study about the problem with culverts along the number 2 highway. And Jesse could probably share that with you. January 16th, I attended the RCMP annual performance plan workshop with other councillors. January 27th, attended the NSFM Climate Change Advisory Committee meeting. They're obviously looking for people to join some of these committees. They called me and asked if I would join the infrastructure committee, but I'm already involved in enough stuff now. If any other councillors want to get involved in some of those committees, I know Councillor Mitchell is involved in one. January 27th, attended the East Hants Arena Association meeting. They're just winding up the association since the municipality took over the Sportsplex. That's about it. Lots of calls and emails in January. Just like every other councillor, I track all my emails and calls and documents that I receive. And so far in January, I received 156. It sounds like a lot, but I'm sure other councillors, all councillors receive about the same amount. I'm just tracking it. A lot of it doesn't take a lot of time. It's just a matter of a quick response. That's about it. That's it, Warden.
Thank you. Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Me and Councillor Perry had a good meeting with the MLA, Brad Jones, and it's always fun to meet with him. And there was a good discussion about everything we need here in Mount Union. On the other hand, I was approached by a very frustrated resident, and it's about the undersized lots on the lakes. So I understand his frustration, and I always thought that if you get approval for septic and sewer for septic on the undersized lot on a lake from the environment, we give you a permit. So with discussion with John, and after John sent me an email about the situation, I understood that it's not always the way that we do it. So there's variances, and I was wondering if I'm gonna put a motion for staff to bring a report back about the discussion about the variances, setback variances from the lake and water sources for the undersized lots. So would that be my question to John is, would that be under the review for Mount Uniacke or under the planning review for the whole municipality?
Through you, Madam Warden, I mean, it could be either. I would think it's a general change, not just Mount Uniacke. So I guess my preference would be to deal with it across the municipality.
Yeah, so can I bring it now? Can I put the motion now and you deal with it at your...
Yeah, council can make a motion or pass a motion anytime. We'll deal with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Were you looking for the motion for it to be dealt with in the plan review or to be dealt with before?
If we can do it before, like with Mount Uniacke planning, like now that we're doing the Mount Uniacke planning, I don't know if there's any other, like, there's not many lots left like that. And you know, when somebody see like every lot around him have a house on it, and he couldn't, like, he got approval from the environment and the lot. I think it's a good idea to let people use their lots. So
So I just ask you to clarify your motion, Counselor.
yes, like if we can do it during the Mount Uniacke review, if possible.
Is that clear, John?
It is, as I said, my preference would, I think it would still be a general change that would apply to all areas of East Hants, but if that's the direction, that's what we'll do.
Thank you, John. So I will move that the council asks staff to bring a report to review the setbacks variances from water courses and lakes for the undersized lots.
Second.
Moved and seconded, but for clarification,
Ooh.
I think we've had discussion on under the UNIAC area review or the general plan review. I think the motion should specify.
Under the Mount Uniacke review, planning review.
Agreed, seconder?
Yes.
Discussion on the motion. We'll go to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried. Anything else, Councillor Musa?
Thank you, council, and that's it for me. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Warden. Yeah, just a couple of things. I had a meeting with a group that's interested. We've talked about this before, establishing a dairy museum in Shubenacadie. So they're talking it over and hope to make a presentation to council sometime in the future, and they'll be asking for that. Also, I attended like the RCMP performance review, surplus property, executive meetings. I also attended on this past Monday the Code of Conduct training. It was very interesting, some good discussion with counselors from, well, quite far away, Antigonish, Bridgewater, whatever. I would encourage any counselor that can get to one just so they can hear lawyer Parker Burns gave the presentation, so he could really give us some good answers on some things. Two items that I questioned or asked him about that they spoke about was it pertained like with surplus things such as our laptops. I know that was a discussion we had late last year. I think it was in November. And they said that, yeah, the code of conduct certainly wouldn't stop us from, when we retired laptops, if a counselor wanted to keep their laptop, that would not be a problem, actually. So I just a little clarification on that, because I know at the time we weren't just sure what the new code of conduct envisaged there. Also, an interesting thing was that counselors weren't able to solicit funds, and there was a mayor of Bridgewater, I think it was, but I'm not sure now. Anyway, he's a Rotarian. They said, no, you definitely can't be going around, even though you've done it for years. You can't go and shouldn't be going and soliciting funds when you're on council. Another lady asked about town days. She said, well, I've always, they said, no, you should not be. That could be a conflict of interest. So I thought that was kind of interesting because I know, myself with heydays, I've gone to, asking for money since I've been a counselor, and apparently, according to their interpretation of it, we shouldn't be doing that. So I just thought that was something that everybody should be aware of. Also, we just had last night, we had our first meeting of the new agricultural committee. And also I'd like to thank Councillor Merriam. He put me in touch with the person who has some ideas about the Shubby tree. I don't know how many councillors are aware of the Shubby tree, but it was quite famous around when it was destroyed by lightning during a hurricane a couple of years ago. So anyway, there's nothing to report yet, but could be an interesting project involving some of the wood from the tree. Anyway, that's everything for me. Thanks, Warden.
Thank you. Well, that brings us, counselors, to the end of our agenda. I would be looking for someone to move the date and time of the next council meetings, which would be February 18th, 2025, regular meeting of council for policy and in camera, and February 26th, 2025, regular meeting of council.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Musa. Any discussion?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried. I would now be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Garden Cole, seconded by Councillor Musa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion is carried. We stand adjourned. Councilors, it will take staff a few minutes to disconnect the live stream. I thank you all for coming to your computers this evening and getting through the business that we had to do in spite of the nasty weather and miserable road conditions in places.